Hello, welcome. I'm Peggy. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of your day. And we have somebody here that you and I have a chance to learn a lot of things. And I never thought about what it means to write a book and get it published. And she is a publisher. But she also does something else that fascinates me. And it's something we all could really enjoy and treasure. She helps people create memories of their family, the history of their family. For instance, if your grandparents are still living, you can have a program made with them and speaking with their voice and hearing them. And someday when they're no longer here, you'll have that to share with your children, maybe even your great-grandchildren. These are treasures. And I'm so pleased to welcome Vally Sharpe. Vally, thank you.
Thank you.
She makes her home in Asheville, North Carolina, and her business is called United Writers Press.
That's correct.
And so you, first of all, you started out publishing books. And this is, I guess the word is self-publishing. Because if somebody's very famous and they write a book, you know, a publisher right away, they want the manuscript and they pay them millions of dollars because they know they're going to make a lot of money.
Right.
If you're not a famous person and you write a book, sometimes it isn't easy to get it published. And that's where you come in.
That's correct. Most times it's not easy to get it published. In fact, the estimates are that something like only 2%, and that's probably high, of the manuscripts that get sent in to the traditional publishers are actually accepted.
So you hear from people all over.
I do.
mean, Asheville's your home, but you, all over the country, you've published books for people.
I have. Right now, for instance, I'm working on a series of educational books with a couple in New York. I have a Michigan author that I'm working with. The good thing with computers is that book publishing can generally be done virtually, and the computers help that a lot.
You brought some books, Vally, and give us an idea of what you're talking about.
Okay.
There can be children's books, there can be anything.
They absolutely can. One that your Greenville audience would be very familiar with, I think, is the children's book Mice on Main, which is done very well, and it's, of course, a story of how the mice on Main, the bronze mice that Zan Wells created now, I think, about 15 years ago, how they came to be here. Also, a children's book that has just recently come out that's about the Swamp Rabbit Trail, called Hey Blue, a family of bunnies who inhabit the Swamp Rabbit Trail and go biking.
And of course, what age group would, these are for children, obviously.
These are children. Mice on Main is a little bit higher, but the good thing about it is that, you know, parents and grandparents can certainly read to any age child, and the scavenger hunt of heading for downtown Greenville and looking for the mice is there. This is for a child who's really probably a younger group generally, but one that is learning to ride bicycles. I mean, that general age. The Greenville hospital system supported it because of bike safety and of their association with the Swamp Rabbit Trail. I'll show one other that probably has been our biggest success. You were mentioning self-publishing. Well, just because you self-publish doesn't mean anymore that a traditional publisher might not pick you up. This book, I call it incubated. When I was in Atlanta, Pete the Cat, I Love My White Shoes, and it was so successful, it caught the attention of HarperCollins, and back in 2010 actually ended up on the New York Times bestseller list for a number of weeks. But we're not limited just to children's books. For instance, this is a book that unfortunately has sold out, but these are stories from a World War II fighter group who flew from Bodney, England, written from interviews, so that basically the stories in their own words. Some fascinating, funny stories in many cases, but a collection that particularly military aviation aficionados really love, and that's why it sold out pretty fast. Here's one more. This was an Atlanta artist who had spent most of her life painting landscapes of her hometown, and so we wrote some copy basically of the stories.
So it can be anything.
Virtually anything that you want to.
And what is the one with the education? What is this one?
We have.
This fascinates me.
This is a book. In fact, the New York couple that I was talking about wrote this back in 2007.
Why bad grades happen to good kids.
Exactly.
And right now, a lot of parents would be interested in that book.
Absolutely. There is a companion book, by the way, called Why Bad Grades Happen to Good Teachers, given the brouhaha between the Common Core.
Now, are these books available in bookstores? Or if you publish your own book, how do you get it to people?
Well, thankfully, Amazon.
Yeah.
And a lot of the what has happened to change the world of the self-publisher of late is certainly the computer and the internet and online book selling. It's very difficult even for traditional publishers to get a book into what we call a brick and mortar bookstore like Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
It can be done. But you have to have an account generally with a wholesaler or distributor of books because they won't buy directly from an author.
But someone out there who has, maybe they've written and they go, oh, I wouldn't know how to get it published. You help people. You sit down with them and you show them the road you have to travel, in other words, to get from A to B.
Absolutely.
And then any book that is published, the general public can buy.
Absolutely. What I found, this all came about because, and I'll show my own book, I published this about 12 years ago. It's called Simon Says, Views from a Higher Perspective, and it's 26 stories written from the point of view of a Siamese cat.
Oh.
I knew, for instance, I didn't even try the traditional route of trying to get a literary agent, for example, to try and sell it to some of the traditional publishers, because at the time I wasn't sure that there were many agents that would represent channeled cat stories. So I set it out to self-publish myself. Now, fortunately, I had a professional background I had been writing for some time, but I also had been a marketing director and understood the business end of it. And I became the president of the Georgia Writers Association at that time. And what I saw was exactly what you were talking about a moment ago. Most people have a book in them, and they can write it down in a word processor. But most of them stop short and go to a Kinko's or a copy shop, and you end up with a comb-bound book. And there's nothing absolutely wrong with that. But there was a little bit of a disconnect for the writer and the business side of book publishing. And we started our company, United Writers Press, to bridge that gap. I straddle the fence because I'm knowing how it feels to be the writer who wants to get the book out there, but also having the business skills that I had. We take that and do all the pieces. Things like the cover design. We have the graphic artist to lay out the book and get it ready to be printed by a larger printing press. We understand how you calculate spine width. We know what an ISBN is and where to get them. And all those little details that the author really doesn't need to know. They certainly can if they're interested in it and want to do full self-publishing.
You take the raw material, so to speak, and create the finished product.
Absolutely.
Now, and we do have websites and a phone number. We also have, to me, a story that this led to something else that you hadn't even planned to do.
Exactly.
So you started out publishing books and helping people get their books all together and published. Great. And then you started into something else which speaks to my heart. And most people think, oh, I don't have a very interesting life. Who'd be interested? You'd be surprised. And to have a memory of your parents, your grandparents, those people you loved, that you can treasure and hold on to and look at and listen to and pass on to your children and your grandchildren. What a treasure. Incredible. And that's what you do. As a result of this, you've gone into something which to me is even more meaningful.
Absolutely. I agree. Let me say first that the idea that I'm about to try and describe was rattling around in my head 30 years ago. And it has stayed with me through the technology advances that now make it possible to do what we're talking about doing. My grandmother died in 1982. We had audio cassettes probably back then. But most people probably didn't have a microphone and they weren't running around and doing this sort of thing. No. And about 6 months after she passed away, my nephew, who was then about 5, happened to say that he didn't remember what Mama Lois, which was what we called my grandmother, what her face looked like. Mm-hmm. He didn't remember how she sounded, although he had spent a good bit of time with her. And I thought, gosh, absolutely, that's true. And then I realized that neither did I. Yeah. That the face, except for those two-dimensional pictures that we have, which thank goodness we had, there wasn't a real way to express the essence of who she was. And that just hung with me for a very long time. Through the years, getting into the publishing, but also because I had been a marketing director and seeing the evolution of camera work and editing, it occurred to me that if we could put the two together so that we would have a book and a video, we could preserve it for just about anybody. And that's what you're talking about there. I mean, how many times, I'm 57, and there are any number of times that I think, oh gosh, I need to take my video camera and go interview my mother, or I wonder who that is in that picture that I'm looking at in a scrapbook, and I haven't done it yet. I'm the cobbler,
that goes without shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
But that's the point. Most of us really would like to, or we're sitting around listening to the family legends and stories, and one day they're not going to be here, and we will be equally unable to describe in any way that gives them justice our parents and grandparents, just like I was in 1982, but we had the technology to do it.
And what Vally's talking about is, and we're going to a quick break, but what Vally is talking about is not famous people, but people that we love, and someday we'll have something we can hold on to and pass on to future generations. And that you don't put a price tag on something like that, but she's tried to keep it affordable. We'll be right back.